Транспортно-логистический холдинг «Российские железные дороги». Мы развиваем транспортную инфраструктуру страны, строим новые станции и вокзалы и создаем новые возможности для вашего бизнеса. Делая мир максимально доступным для всех, мы адаптируем вокзалы и под нужды каждого.
We adapt train stations and terminals to the needs of everyone. We provide the speediest trains, Sapsan, Allegro, Strijan, Lastichka. They're comfortable and safe. We deliver our goods and to people on time, and we're also the most environmentally friendly type of transport. We contribute even further to environmental protection. We save water and sort the waste. We have the reputation of an immaculate, reliable partner. We build on our legacy, we provide shortcuts, and we connect people. We introduce cutting-edge digital technology and offer new digital services for freight owners. We are the locomotive of the economy. Hundreds of millions of tons of cargo transported every year. We contribute to the Russian economy. Russian railways. We change for the benefit of the people. Welcome to the International Online Forum on Container Shipping Pro-Movement.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники, слушатели, зрители международного
Good morning and good afternoon to your distinguished audience of the International Container Transportation Online Forum, Motion.Eurasia. We have gathered once again to coordinate our activities, exchange opinions, and share our plans and any potential changes. So today we are joined by Andrei Drenichev, Deputy Head of the Center for Corporate Transportation Service, Russian Railways, thank you. And also Alexei Kram, CEO, Chairman of the Board of United Transport and Logistics Company. Live with us, we have Martin Kubik, that's Mitrans, Head of Silk Road. Welcome. We also have Alberto Grisana, Hupak Intermodal. Alberto, we send all the best to you.
В дискуссии принято, я уверена, самое активное участие Uwe Leuschner,
And we also have Uwe Leuschner. Uwe, hi to you, CEO of VLB Group.
Также с нами на связи, так, коллеги, иду дальше, ищу всех в списке всех участников. Ольга Степанова,
we also have Olga Stepanova, Vice President for Rail Services, CEO at Nurman Logistics. Olga, hi to you. And last but not least, Viktor Kolomolzin, Head of Oktyabrskaya Railway, which is a branch of Russian Railways. Thank you for finding the time and joining our discussion today. So, colleagues, will start off. I hope that, just like last year, it will be a very lively discussion. I really hope for the input from Uwe, from Alberta, from Martin, from Olga, and from Victor. We need to talk. We need to understand where we are. So, I would like Andrei to say a few words about where we are. What are the dry facts? Once again, hi to you. On behalf of Russian Railways, I am extremely happy to welcome all of you at the International Container Transportation Online Forum Motion.Eurasia. That's become a great tradition to meet here to discuss all the pressing issues, to raise any new issues, and also identify new prospects for any obstacles that block those prospects. It's extremely important to be able to talk to each other, to find points of convergence and find win-win solutions, to make sure that all the market participants can move forward in a dynamic way. Just like to give you some of the figures about rail transportation of containers. Following the pandemic, the economy is recovering, and the production volumes that we are seeing right now in the Asia region means that container transportation, including in rail, is growing. Freight is on the rise along the deep sea routes. So transportation is up, and some of it is transported across Russia. 9 months saw an increase of 48%, and these are 568 TEUs. So total amount of freight transportation is 780,000 TEU. But overall, we believe that by the end of the year, there will be about 1 million TEU. This will be transit transportation. And maritime shipping is on the rise. So those maritime shipping routes try to incorporate rail stretches, rail routes in their architecture. So it means that what we're doing together is quite efficient and has been a win-win cooperation for us and for our partners around the world. Many of the containers from the Asia-Pacific come to St. Petersburg, and then we put them on vessels, sea vessels, and deliver them further to our European partners. It means that multimodal, multimodule transportation is the future. At least they will have a share in the future. So as part of this diversification, I would like to focus on the following. Let's look at the Kaliningrad rail region. And we set up a new growth point for Russian railways there. That allowed to boost Russia's transit potential for the railways, and today we are seeing new projects unfolding. Mamon-Bronyova and Skandova through the port of Kaliningrad and the port of Baltiysk. Together with our partners in Leningrad, on the 1st of October, we launched a new terminal. It's called East-West. It will process transship containers from China to Europe. So that will be a new channel, a new route that will help to increase the capacity. This will be one of the key new hubs along the new Silk Road that's been developing so fast today. So these are some of the key points on our agenda. I hope you can all weigh in on these items so that we can plan ahead for the next year. And I hope that 2022 will also see some growth, maybe not the same in the same pace as the previous 2 years, but still there will be growth, and we need to be prepared for it. We need to be ready to rise up to the challenges that it will bring. So, ready to rise up to the challenges. Thank you, Andrei. I'd like each of the participants to give an overview of where we are. And so, 5 years, that's been the lifespan, the current track record of UTLC ERA. So, as Andrei said, the growth pace is waning, but what each of the participants is doing in China, in Kazakhstan, in Russia, in Belarus, to make sure that we keep at the same pace. It's a great pleasure to see all of you, well, so far on the screens, but all those I can see today, these are the people who've made a major contribution into the development of Eurasian's rail transit. So if we go back 5 years ago, 2016, 2015, when all we had were just dreams of that 1 million TEUs. And Mr. Dranichev said that we will be able, we are expected to overcome this threshold, this great milestone. It's a great occasion to come together and to thank each other for this work, to celebrate this. And, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, so we need to set new ambitious plans. And the European trade market indicates that there will be high demand for our transit services in the years to come. Rail is all about quality, in-demand services. Now, if you break it down by the segments, the world has changed, definitely. Reality is a different one. And the most predictable thing we are facing right now is unpredictability, uncertainty. We used to focus on high-value added products. We talked about electronics, cars and spare parts. Today, our services are available for any items, for any products, and we can move luxury car manufacturers, supplies and pulp and paper products, a lot of cheap plastic goods, and pret-a-porter, the fashion industry. You didn't have it 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we had just a few routes and a few items, and we focused on this high value added segment. So you've achieved it. Yes, but our service is now affordable, competitive to any customer in Europe and in the Asia Pacific. We also expanded our geography. We just wanted to cover some end-to-end routes from the key hubs in China to some terminals in Europe. A maximum of 20. That was the past. Today, it's 200. So, over the past 9 months, we've added 60 new locations in Europe and in China. So, from China to the UK, we use this short sea route from the port of Kaliningrad to the biggest ports in the UK. It's no surprise, these destinations, these routes. In Q3, we had about 20 such trains. To the UK, right, so far it's just one way. Nevertheless, there's sustainable demand for it. And in Q4, this demand will continue to grow. What used to be considered a dream, according to textbooks, it used to be considered in textbooks as irrational, not along the deep sea lines, but we just transported from eastern ports of China to the ports of the UK using rail, just using the short sea, small stretch from the port of Kaliningrad to the ports of UK. A lot has changed over the past 5 years, and it would take me a lot of time to dwell upon it, but what I can safely say is that the number of participants has drastically increased. How much? Again, it's not just our company. We do have a very big share in transit, but other corridors are increasing and improving. Corridors through Mongolia or through Trans-Baikal territories. FESCO offers great service. Or take the destination towards the route towards Finland. They have their own competitive edge. We have this. They have the same track length, same track width with the Eurasian Economic Union members. So we are seeing a huge number of participants. It means we are on the right track. And volumes, increase in volumes, speak volumes. Sorry for the pun. So what are the figures? So 9 months brought us about 550 TEUs. We want to reach 700,000 TEUs. What about the million? Well, the million milestone is an ambitious goal for us, and that's a figure which strongly motivates us, to reach out to new products and new items and to reach out to new partners. Now, very briefly, you said that it's all about uncertainty, but the 3 rail administrations this year signed a memorandum of understanding in Kyrgyzstan, and at least from we know from the media, is your focus on decarbonization and digitalization. Could we talk further about it? China is facing an energy crisis and might be a spillover effect to India. So decarbonization, digitalization. What about the freight owners? Will they pay for it? Or your tariffs won't change, but these benefits will be added by default without changing the price. Digitalization and decarbonization, that affects the capitalization of our companies. Those freight owners, so these 2 factors were on top of the agenda of that memorandum signed by the shareholders in Kyrgyzstan. So the companies that use our services will get extra dividends from it. Specifically, again, they could attract some green bonds, green loans, in terms of green financing. As for OET, as for production and operations, that could mean anything, actually. You can save time on financial reporting or coming up with some new digital services to the top-notch brands, or from the car industry, from the food industry, any industry. So these variables are paramount or key to their further growth. So, Alexei, when we talk about figures, everyone been saying about the new digital bill of lading, and you said you're going to introduce it in 2022, so finally we're going to see this digital bill of lading. Will we finally see it? And who is in the vanguard? Who's been promoting it? Is it China? Is it Russia? Is it the EU? Have you been helping each other?
Ну, нам, конечно же, для развития нашего сервиса, для повышения его конкурентоспособности.
To make our service competitive, we definitely need a single digital transit bill of lading. What do we have today? China has its own bill. Kazakhstan has its own one. We have our own. We have, and in Belarus, they also have their own one, but there are information systems like a database which is kind of shared. They can use the bills from the EU, so we just need to come up with our own Eurasian standard, one technology, and so that we just have this single digital bill of lading. So you're very close to it. Yes, I think so. So we will bring our efforts together. I represent 3 rail administrations, 3 countries. When I say we, I'm referring to Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. So I think we are closer to setting up this single digital bill of lading with China. We've been working with just one country, with one party, while in Europe there are stakeholders, operators, and etc. So my forecast, my wish for 2022 is to make it happen, because the bill of lading in the sea, in maritime shipping, is digital, and it's been like that for a long time. And that will definitely give us a lot of growth points. Now I'd like to reach out to our European partners. Martin Kubek, what's happening to container shipping in the EU? Why I'm asking you. You're a shipper. 2021 was called the Year of Rail. Has it really changed the infrastructure? Is it easier? Have you introduced any digital technology? So what has happened in 2021? Except for the strikes in Spain and other countries, what has changed for the better to make sure that container trains were able to go at a good speed? Over to you.
Hello once more. Thank you for possibility to participate here. Добрый день. You mentioned the European Year of Rail. Basically, 2021, unfortunately, I have to say that not much changed. On the other side is of course, in Europe, long-term issue currently that all the countries are trying to invest a little bit more in the infrastructure. That's good point from my side. So it means that the countries are really willing to improve the rail infrastructure. On the other side, for this year, it means there are a lot of closures and construction works, which makes our life a little bit more difficult. As you know, Metrans is a carrier in a lot of European countries, mainly in the Central and Eastern Europe, with own locomotives and loco drivers. So we know very well how the infrastructures are working. And if we speak about the connection, intermodal connection, in the rail connection from the seaports to the hinterland, or from the eastern borders to the hinterland, we are trying to do our best to, let's say, deliver the cargo within some reasonable time. What we see and what is now the main issue is, of course, that those investments of the infrastructures are a little bit breaking us to make it efficient and much more faster. On the other side, we can see the good, or we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I believe that not only this year, but also in the next years, in the European Union and the countries in Europe will invest further to the infrastructure. What we can see in the Czech Republic, for example, is the biggest investment in the rail infrastructure. What we see in Poland is quite huge investment in the rail infrastructure. What we see in Slovakia is the investment into the infrastructure and connection to the Silk Road via Ukraine. Austria is willing to improve a little bit and to move the cargo from roads to the rail. So yeah, political will is here, and we believe that it will really help in the longer term to us and to our client to really move the cargo faster and more efficiently. If Alexei spoken about a electronic bill of lading, it of course could help also us to, let's say, discuss how to improve the European part. Even for us, it's a little bit less difficult, as in Europe we can cope with one team and to do it somehow in some countries also SMGS. So I believe that these electronic bill of lading might help, let's say, in the data interface between our companies and rail freight carriers in general, and we could do it much faster, and digitalization might help us for the improvement in the next years.
Martin,
what about investment and digitalization? Do you think that investment and digitalization will increase the volume that's coming from China across Eurasia to the European destinations? Or, so is it about the volumes or just attracting more participants? Or will it help the countries themselves that provide the infrastructure to deal with those bottlenecks and with those delays? Because we have limited capacity. We've been talking about limited capacity and bottlenecks every year. And at the same time, we say that technology can ease those bottlenecks, or digitalization can help and ease. And you also talk about new investment by Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia. How can it help those services? How can it improve those services? Can you give us your take on that?
Yeah, I strongly believe that the digitalization is the future for the rail freight. It's not only about digitalization process between the East and West, let's say, but it's also digitalization intra-Europe, because we strongly need to make our intra-European systems to make them much easier and workable. We are now in 2021, but the rail freight is somehow a little bit in 100 years back. So we really need the digitalization. We really need to focus on the future, and the European Union also knows that we need to improve it and to, let's say, make the exchanges between the railway, between the carriers, between the local drivers, etc., to be much more effective. In Europe, we have some security system, ECTS, which is going to be implemented, which might help to speed up the trains. We have a lot of projects which might which might switch the passenger trains to the speed railways and make them easier for us as a carrier to bring the cargo on the rail. So basically, these all are the things which we are dealing with, and also, as I mentioned, basically when we will be able to exchange the data from the eastern part of Europe to the western part of Europe, if I can name it like this, then of course it might speed up a little bit the trains. And I strongly believe that the bottlenecks might be managed a little bit better thanks to the digitalization. To the question of the countries, if they are willing to step in, if you mean that they will somehow implement own procedures, I believe and I hope that basically we will be facing the situation when the whole European Union will be speaking in one voice and will be able to agree with one voice to also to the railway. Because of course here in Europe, generally in all the countries, there is a big discussion how railway is difficult against the trucking system, because of course the truck driver could drive from Malaševice or even Brest to any European country without limitation. Just okay, he needs to spend time in the truck only for, I don't know, 9-10 hours maximum. But this is the only limitation. For the rail freight, you need to change the loco driver on every border, and you have to have special systems on the locomotive, which is currently not the biggest issue. We have it as Metrans, and all of the carriers have it. But generally, this is
Ну, в общем,
point which we need to see.
Martin, last question, and then I come to Alberto. Correct me if I'm wrong, and please clarify. Intras is the carrier, but are you also taking part in forwarding? And I wonder whether this niche is quite interesting for you or not.
I'm not sure if I understood well. You mean the forwarding, like transportation, like freight forwarder?
Да.
Yes, indeed. Forwarding of cargoes. Are you interested in such business?
Basically not. We are not a freight forwarding for a company. We are really intermodal operator. So we are not going to touch the final clients, and Metrans was always neutral. So we are willing to stay neutral for our clients, and we are really the carrier, intermodal operator, operator of the terminals, and that's our place where we would like to stay also in the future and focus on this.
Thank you very much, Alberto. A year ago, we also talked to you and discussed with you some infrastructural limitations and opportunities for the future. Now, a year later, in the fall of 2021, and we heard from Martin about the challenges of railroads compared to trucking. In that past year, in your view, what challenges we still do have in terms of the railroad transportation of containers?
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me and for asking the same question of last year. I can say that somehow many of the challenges that we had 1 year ago, we still have now, but within Europe, many things change, at least on the north-south Transalpine axle. Now the long Alpine tunnel through Switzerland are fully operational, both of them. And also in Italy, a lot of work has been done to adapt the line, and the train length of the train is improving. The profile of the line is improving, because in Europe we have an authentic explosion of interest for the transportation of semi-trailers, or what in Russia is defined as con-trailer project. So some things are happening. Some things are developing, but still we have a lot of difficulties and a lot of situations which are quite on the same level as last year, because the majority of the investment that has been foreseen for the realization of the TNT corridors 2030 are starting to become effective now, are starting to be allocated now, are starting to be put in place on the various railway infrastructure now, like Martin said, especially in the eastern part of Europe, as well as in countries which are quite central, like Germany or like France, where there is a big need of a lot of infrastructural investment. Unfortunately, this is sometimes not extremely well coordinated among the countries, because the European Union is not talking like one voice only, but it is everything very, very unmoving. And we have expectation that for the next 5 to 7 years, we will have a lot of improvement in the railway solutions.
Alberto, thank you. And perhaps I would have a point of clarification for Andrei. This volume of transit container shipments, what is the number today in the total volume of freight shipments? Is it like 1%? Yes, around that. Alberto, what is the volume of container shipments in the total railroad freight of Europe? Do you have such information?
Yes, in Europe at this moment, approximately 18% of the total cargo flow is transported by railway.
При этом из уст политиков,
And also politicians and railroad managers are talking about they need to increase such a share. Do we see such a direct political will for that? Because you invested into the infrastructure, etc. But do you think there is a single position that we all need that? Russian railways say that indeed we need to develop that. We need to reach 1 million by the end of the year. So what are your expectations in terms of increasing the container shipments from the powers?
If the question is to me, in Europe we have a very clear guideline, which is the White Book of the European Union, which is saying that within the year 2030, 30% of the cargo flow must go on the railway, and 50% of the cargo flow must be on the railway within the year 2050.
Alberto, thank you very much. Uwe, Alexei already mentioned that there is some uncertainty around. Alberto also mentioned some numbers by the year 2030. Do you think that this is reachable and attainable? And what are your forecasts and moods in terms of reaching such levels? Where are you moving as part of this market? How are you going to change, and how are you going to change the market? Mariana and dear friends and colleagues, I believe that we are together with you, and we can be more frank about things that we still have and that we are still missing. Of course, I congratulate you all about the numbers that we all heard from Alexei about this year. And but you know me, I want more. So that's why I want to discuss what is still missing. Colleagues, indeed, we are increasing our throughput capacity for container shipments between Asia and Europe. But the truth is that the rates and the prices for the market and for the clients have increased a lot, and the time of shipment has also grown. That the product that we want to offer is worse in its characteristics for different reasons, and that is true. The second thing that I would like to say is that unfortunately in 2020 and in 2021 we were not able to increase the flows, and we were not able to meet the this mismatch between the destinations of such flows. So we all know that we need investment, and indeed this need is very high. But we all know that our market is kind of split between the niches, but the market wants more than we can offer. However, investment can only be done by those who are not really driven by the needs and demands of those of clients. What I mean to say is that we do have some operators who have direct access to the clients, but they cannot invest where we need such investment, and infrastructural investment is indeed sometimes very large here and there. That is true, but quite often we're talking about public investment into such projects, and major companies like railroads that quite often are owned by the government would dictate the terms and conditions, and others who want to have access to this market don't have this opportunity to access. And we still have this open question of financing, and the need to provide advance payments and finance the growth of transportation corridors. We do see some big point in improving that. We need also to interact with the financial community. And we still see some kind of monopolistic behavior in this area, in this industry. We do see some certain attitudes from the ruling circles and major companies and the powers, like in China, but also in the Eurasian space and in Europe. Of course, as I believe, we need to continue innovating our products, our actions. I recall here the strong wind that was blowing in 2017-2018, when with Viktor Grigorievich and Alexei Nikolaevich, we started to think how to really launch the multimodal transportation corridor through the Baltic. And I'm still remembering and recalling all those arguments. Today we say that this is normal, and this is where we need to move on, and we need to really improve the quality of our products. And it is very important to consolidate our compliance along the supply chains and improve the compliance in the very basics of our operations. We need to really focus on those processes. This is important to our clients. We need to improve all our track and tracing systems, and we need to be monitoring our shipments. We need to improve our activities for the transit of containers and the pools, etc. And indeed, electronic document flow is something that is important for the railroads. This is no longer an issue. Indeed, the electronic waybills should be put into practice as fast as possible. And of course, there's more and more argument in favor of supporting clients to help clients choose the proper mode of transportation. And this is going to be a strategic point for our products. This year, in 2021, we are going to issue to our clients certificates of CO2 emissions between Asia and Europe and Asia, so that they can use those certificates for their purposes, but most probably to support the logistical planning. And that would be important to handle the freight. And I would invite all of you, my colleagues and friends, to assume that as a very important innovation that should be put into our plans for 2022. Uwe, thank you very much. And Alexei, perhaps you can respond to that. Uwe was right in talking about certain things. The prices are going up, the time of delivery is going up. So what do you think, what could be the solution? Well, Uwe is the immediate participant of all the processes that we have had so far in the recent years in terms of developing Eurasian transportation, and he knows about that not by hearsay, but he was immediately involved there. In terms of rates and pricing, of course, this is mostly the pricing for the deep sea Eurasian shipments. That's where we see a very high growth in pricing. No, I meant railroads. Well, well, if it is railroads and not deep sea shipments, then we need to really think about the functions that we all have in those delivery chains. TLK shareholders in Kyrgyzstan recently decided that, they made such a logical conclusion that the tariffs of TLK and pricing would be stable and would be predictable and reliable for our clients. If you remember the tariffs of 2015, you would immediately realize that today the prices are by 30% cheaper and lower for the clients, and those rates will remain at that same level. So there was a strategic decision not to increase those rates and keep them as reliable and predictable. In terms of the time of delivery, yes, indeed, the time is now longer. But in terms of the time, then the key factor of success there for this service would be synchronized actions from all the participants in the logistical chain. Why do we see some rail cars sitting idle just because the adjacent industries cannot really accept all those rail cars in full? In Europe, you mean? No. If it is really happening in the in transborder areas of the European Union, this would immediately reflect on the volume of rail cars and shipments in the border of China and Central Asia. We have shipments for more. It's like a pipeline, really, of 100 container trains. And to ensure the smooth operation, we need to be synchronous in our actions. We can provide a smooth shipment across the country, but container ships may be standing idle on the border, and hence this would decrease the overall speed of delivery. And of course, this is a function of this very dynamic growth of the industry and of shipments. And of course, from time to time, it comes to various delays in infrastructure. We are taking some action to debottleneck the infrastructure, but this is also a common intergovernmental task handled by our shareholders. We know what Kazakhstan is doing. We know how much investment is done there and how much investment is done in Russia and in Belarus. We do see some private terminals coming up on the borders of the Eurasian Economic Union. We do see the developments of our partners like seaports that are at the connection of the railroads and short sea. But of course, our volumes are probably a little bit ahead of the capacity of processing, and for that we need to unite and try to debottleneck that, so that the speed of delivery and shipments would be higher and the quality would be higher. Uwe is right. Indeed, the growth of volumes was very important. We transshipped quite a lot through Malashevich and Brest, and we thought that was the maximum. Today, we are transshipping 45 instead of 30 before, but we know how to handle that. We already know that this is a comprehensive task. In terms of infrastructure, technologies and processes, we need to develop from all ends, and this is our immediate task. Is Uwe right that this is more or less like a monopolistic story, and maybe the shippers would be more beneficial in trying to have some alternatives? And probably Uwe should really take that. But Uwe said that this monopolistic behavior really interferes. Of course, it is not really offering to explore all opportunities. And partially, this monopolistic position would is like a tradition. What is a monopoly? I would not be even talking about monopoly. The Eurasian transit market is open to whoever, and very much open. See how many participants and players we have there. See how many shippers and owners do we have there. This is something unprecedented, and a vivid example of this is the volume of shipments. If it really comes to such an outcome, such a development level, then, well, you know, talking about some alliances that would be perceived by some as a monopoly, but then monopoly is, of course, about limitations or restrictions, but for what purpose? To resolve the tasks and meet the needs of the countries and shareholders. When you see more shipments, those alliances are developing, and even the global transportation industry sees this as the most developing and fast-developing sector. Going on, Olga, indeed, about the alternatives, I think it would be interesting to ask you of that. Nurminen Logistics is the Finnish story, and then I would come to some other members. Of course, perhaps you can talk more about this market. What is the benefit of going there? Maybe you also should talk about the width of the track, but also about the current volumes. Perhaps you had some different numbers 5 years ago, but the demand on the market really stimulated the growth of such volumes. And how many pairs of trains do you handle today, a weekend or month? And what would be the most important destinations? From where do you deliver? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm happy to see you all, and thank you for being invited here, for inviting Nurminen Logistics there. And it is quite wonderful for us to be able to discuss openly many of the challenges and issues. Unlike Uwe, I'm going to be more optimistic because this route through Finland is still at a stage when Russia can be offered some additional volumes just because of some technological solutions. There's no really acute problem in any, backlog on the border, and the trains today are running using the same 15-20 tracks. They are going into Finland without any delays, and they are reaching the final destination. Our pride and something that we can boast about during this year is not the growth of volumes. Of course, we had some significant growth. Nurminen Logistics started off a few years back with 3 trains connecting China and Finland. Today it is like 15 such trains every month. But it is not really this multifold growth in volumes, but 2 points there. One is that today the Finnish route and the destination made a very important step forward to establish itself as a Nordic hub for the further shipment of cargoes delivered from Asia to Europe. Previously, we only had shipments between China and Finland, and now those shipments are going to Norway and Sweden, but we are also shipping to the UK and Germany. Last week, we actually started shipping to Finland via Finland from China. So this is a very important step forward, and if indeed previously we worked within an international transportation corridor between China and Europe, today we are receiving shipments from Japan, Korea, Vietnam and Singapore, so we're covering more Southeast Asia as well. And Finland is now the point where we can receive cargoes from Southeast Asia, but also ship. And the second point there is that this growth in volumes, indeed, some share of that would be kind of like panic-driven, I would say. So the cargoes that cannot really be using the deep sea routes because of the high prices and lack of capacity there. And this panic-driven volume is not really illustrative in terms of growth, but there we also have some good share of cargoes for the industrial holdings and companies that are within the global sourcing chains, and the owners and shareholders and top managers of those holding groups facing this crisis in the Suez Channel already decided that logistics and logistical solutions should be diversified. And this is also a point for the risk management practices. And hence the owners and the managers of such big companies are saying that it is critically important for them to have railroads as part of their logistical solutions, not only deep sea. What my colleagues actually mentioned already, if before the notional flow between Korea, Japan and Finland was traditionally sea, and this has been a several decades story. Now today our clients, our owners are saying that part of such cargoes should be shipped by rail, just because of the risk management strategy and control over cargo flows. To us, this is a big achievement, we think, and a few years back we discussed that railroads looking forward when Chinese subsidies would go away and when the market would be leveling out, we would still need to keep those important industrial cargoes for the railroad, and we do see that they are staying with us. This global logistics would not be currently changed overnight. The second point there is that we do see that such clients, like industrial clients, they understand the need for stabilization of shipments, and this is not only for the forwarder to really ensure that, but even the consumers and the producers, they are trying to be built into this chain, because you are managing inventories and you are managing the deliveries of inputs, etc. So they are prepared to support forwarding agents, and this is a good synergy that would really push further and incentivize our growth. In any case, all our major clients are saying and claiming that railways would be part of their global logistics, and I think that this is the biggest achievement now. What are your most ambitious plans? You now have 10 to 15 trains a month, but what would be your ambition? Because I'd like to talk about the specific section of the way and of the route, and whether the capacity of that section would be in line with your plans. You cannot be too much optimistic there, because indeed there's a lot of room for improvement and increase. We can easily reach like 30 trains a weekend to Finland, and then have the short sea to Europe. And in Finland we can really use not only the ports of Helsinki and the railroad terminal there, but we are also sending trains to the Kotka port. and its railway terminal there. So the growth can be quite significant. When trains go through Finland, they're only going to the Nordic countries, or do you have other some destinations? Like I said, indeed, most of the freight goes to the Scandinavian countries, but because we need also to receive additional cargoes from China, we would be sending such cargoes via Finland to Germany, and also, like I mentioned, we started shipping to France. What is the transit time that you are offering to your clients? You say, how many days does it take to deliver to Finland? Well, of course, the transit time would really differ from route to route, and if you take OTLK via Kazakhstan to Finland, this would be a very fast and very efficient and stable route, and from Chonsin to Finland it takes 16 to 17 days, and this is stable time.
Now, through Russia's Far Eastern ports, it's more complicated. The port infrastructure cannot handle the huge volume that we can offer, and containers can stay there up to 4 weeks. But once we put together a container train, it goes smoothly from there on to Finland. It's going to take about 14 days, 2 weeks. Now, a follow-up question. Some media said that the ports there's a mismatch between European ports and Asian ports. Is that true, or it's fine? Is it business as usual? So is there any backlog in European ports? And I will put the same question to other colleagues online. So we have our partners in China, South Korea, and we see that the transshipment time is slowing down. So some ships could, stay and could wait for about 3 days or even 7 days. As for Europe, the communication that we have between Germany and Finland, actually we don't see any issues. Again, I'm only referring to the feeder systems, and if you talk about containers from Helsinki to Hamburg, you can always find a ship 5 days before it's being shipped off. It depends on the provider, but it's usually business as usual. Martin, what info do you have on handling cargo in Asian and European ports? Is there any mismatch, any gap?
Generally, we can see that basically all the ships are delayed for some time, and we, as big part of our business is connection to the seaport. Definitely there is a delay with the vessels from China to the European seaports, and we are facing a lot of changes from the clients. I mean, changes of the bookings and information about vessel delays. So definitely this is something what is gonna happen. Another point of view is also the delay in the booking. I mean, in China, before you are able to get the space on the vessel is somehow much more difficult current days. So it's not easy. The demand is quite big. I'm expecting now after the Golden Week, it will even increase the demand. And also it means that the demand for the rail freight will increase. The mismatch is also on the Far East side. We have heard about some difficulties in Vladivostok or Vostochny, or these ports, Russian ports, basically. So yeah, it's all around the world, I would say. or all around the way from China to Europe and back, we see some backlogs and challenges and infrastructure issues in the current days.
Martin, спасибо. Альберто,
Martin, thank you. Albert, do you agree? So do you observe those backlogs, those delays, and where, in Europe or in Asia?
But there are backlogs in the ports of all the world, as Martin said. It's difficult to say where they are more in Europe or more in Eurasia. Unfortunately, they are everywhere, and we are struggling everywhere with that. Concerning what has been told about the Russian port of Vostochny and Vladivostok, we must say that we do permanently and constantly shipment there, and we do not have any problem of capacity inside of the port specifically. Okay, may have congestion, like everywhere. The real problem is to catch the space and to secure the good connecting point with the rotation of the vessels, because the vessels are running between Russia and the Far East or China, especially very irregularly, because in the Chinese port sometimes there are a lot of hindrances because of suspect of corona, or even total closure because a few employees are maybe has been detected with corona. So we do not discuss about the policy for containing the pandemic, which is dramatic enough in the world, as everybody knows. But this is the major problem. It's not really related to the infrastructure of the port, but mainly related to the interconnection between the port and the vessels, because the vessels are not running as they are scheduled.
Thank you, Albert. Uwe, you said that there is a bigger transit time in Eurasia, but what about ports? So everyone seems to be saying that there is disbalance, that there are backlogs, and perhaps it's the pandemic, not just the pandemic, perhaps. What are the reasons? So what do you observe in the ports? I can just confirm what my colleagues said, Martin and Albert. The reasons are different. It's not just the corona pandemic. For our product, for container shipment, we don't need big ferries. Like 200 TEUs, but they are few and far between, and they are very expensive for rent. And again, the ability to use multimodal transport, it depends on your finances, depends on how much money you have. Renting out small ferries cost 3 times more than a couple of years ago, and you have to rent them out for 2 years. So these are the risks and restrictions. So why is there such a high price? Because of a deficit. This is the invisible hand of the market. Well, definitely the market is driven by demand. We need to find some solution. You know, we need to find some win-win solution, the golden mean, so to speak. But without communication, without the acknowledgement of each other's interests, we won't be able to achieve that. This is why we've gathered here at Motion.Eurasia. Victor, a question to you. So we started off with Olga. We started talking about this route towards Finland, and the Oktyabrskaya Railway plays a key role here. So we have a great role model, Kaliningrad. Well, they're not present, but I'll try to be very cautious. So it's a new hub, a new growth point. And we're seeing more and more volume. I'll try to pick the right words. We've seen some backlog. The infrastructure of the Kaliningrad Railroad cannot handle the extra volume. Olga said we can actually have like 30 train pairs. But what about the Oktyabrskaya rail? You also have passenger trains, you have high-speed routes. So the question to you, are you afraid to get into the same trap that Kaliningrad found itself in? And Olga also mentioned some high-tech solutions. Could you say what kind of high-tech solutions could be introduced at Oktyabrskaya Railway so that the trains coming from Southeast Asia to Scandinavia or Germany and France, so that they could run smoothly to avoid this scenario in Kaliningrad? What could be done? Thank you, Mariana, for this invitation to take part in such an authoritative debate. I'm sincerely happy to see my friends, Albert, Uwe, Alexei, Andrei, Martin. We've actually had a lot of meetings to promote Kaliningrad as a new hub. I can recall 2016 when Andrei came to Kaliningrad and we were surprised. I came there in 2016 and 6 months later we got acquainted with my colleagues and we were surprised with the huge capacity for transit, both in rail and multi-module projects. And we were surprised Kaliningrad was not used as a hub. So we launched the first train from Chuntsing through the Chernichowski terminal to Lodz in Poland. So we ran the first train and it went on rolling after that. And the container flow was increasing from then on. And we realized that the rail crossings are likely to be not to be able to handle such a huge volume. And together with Uwe, we set up this multi-module route, and you know it was Rostock, and you know what happened next. And then I moved to the Oktyabrskaya railway, and again it's St. Petersburg. You might remember Peter the Great, right, the first Russian emperor, who wanted to have a window into Europe. So I asked for some stats. What kind of transit do we have? How much transit goes through the Oktyabrskaya railway? I was really surprised. Just 2% of all the transit goes through the Oktyabrskaya railway. Just 2.5%. This year, I hope, could help us reach 1 million TEU. So I realized that we've been underperforming in this track. So this year we will be able to go from 2.5% to 6%, and we'll keep gaining our share. And the question you asked, what are we going to do? What will we introduce? First of all, the Oktyabrskaya railway is not just the Baltic Sea, it's also the Barents Sea and the White Sea. So just a little bit about the Barents Sea. It's the port of Murmansk. It's 11 days along the Northern Sea route. Russia is building its icebreaker fleet, and very soon this Arctic passage will start delivering goods in a full volume. So our terminals can handle transit flows, and their capacity is, they work to the 50 or 70% of their capacity. So we can actually handle a lot of traffic through the seaports of the Baltic Sea. And we can also use the route towards Finland. There's still some extra capacity. So it's just like 50% that's being used. As for the transit freight shipment to Finland, so there's plenty of room for any increase. As for the advantages of the maritime shipping along the Baltic Sea, from St. Petersburg to Kaliningrad, it's just 900 kilometers. The ferry that we currently have from the port of Ust-Luga to the port of Baltisk is just 32 hours. And any of the backlogs that we see media reports about in the Korean port of Busan, where containers can stay for up to 15 days. So those horrible images that we see there, this is the worst case scenario. And we, rail operators, logistics specialists, need to focus on it, need to consolidate and start looking for new flows and routes to carry that freight along the rail. Now on digitalization. 2021 has been announced by Russian Railways as the year of digitalization. This summer, marks the construction of the first quantum network between Moscow and St. Petersburg. Its length is 700 kilometers. And the government of St. Petersburg was able to talk to the management of Russian Airways in Moscow and will continue laying this network. We need this in our era of cyber attacks. We are the second in the world after China. This breakthrough technology will be really key going forward. Now, as for these bill of lading, this digital bill of lading, 92% of all freight goes using these digital technology without any paperwork. We have also added extra convenience. We have an account for each of the customers. They have their own profile. We also have a mobile app that runs on any mobile operating system, mobile Windows or Android or on iOS. You can track your freight, you can do payments. So it's a unique innovation. When I just arrived 18 months ago, I asked, what do we do with Finland? And Finland has its own bill of lading document. So I met with the VR group management. I met with Mir Logistics, and I said, let's switch to one single document to avoid any bottlenecks in our documents. It's not so much trouble, but there's still a bottleneck, and I know that the Finnish railways will switch to European standards according to the TIM system. I've got a follow-up question. So quantum network, this accounts for the customers. So that's on the Russian side, and Uwe said that we need some inner synergy and we need to talk about it, and Martin and Albert talked about it. So if you have something, but you're just one participant of a continuous process, and you mentioned Finland, do you think that there is the desire on the part of Europe to simplify these processes so that we can adapt it to benefit our consumers? Are you witnessing this trend? That's exactly what I was saying. We've been trying to fix those bottlenecks in terms of paperwork, and together with Finland, we've been trying to sort it out. In terms of improving communication, tracking we've introduced a mobile app. This is extra innovation, extra service for our clients. As for logistics through the ports of the Baltic Sea, again, I'm very much surprised why we don't have transit towards Europe through the ports of St. Petersburg. We'll be working with our key partners for the 1520 space, and we have all of the key stakeholders in the port of St. Petersburg, so we'll be working with them. If there are any overland issues, if there are any issues on overland crossings like Malashevich or in Kaliningrad, we'd be happy to come up with some end-to-end routes through the Oktyabrskaya Railway and through the ports of St. Petersburg. What about Kaliningrad? Can you tell us where they are? Well, we don't need to defend Kaliningrad. As Victor said, we started from one train a week, then two. Then trains started running every day. And we saw explosive growth in volume. It was really surprising. And once we got this Brest-Malashevich crossing that we had to, and we had an issue there, and we started to diversify it, and we sent this flow of cargo to Kaliningrad. So, I believe that Kaliningrad is a great role model. As a participant of the process, we were unprepared for such an intensive growth. And we had some issues in the Brest-Malashevich crossing because we saw a huge growth that sometimes happens. There might be some bottlenecks, and you can either complain or take action to remove those bottlenecks. And last week, on the day when Russian Airways was born, we unveiled a new terminal. We had a major meeting with the port of Baltisk, with the Kaliningrad port. We had a major meeting with the customs, with those who file those customs documents. Currently, it just takes up to 1 hour to process a train, although the rule is, like, the deadline is 3 hours in the customs. So we cut that time to 1 hour, or maybe even 30 minutes. And I hope that the volume that we have right now, up to 6 container trains a day, 2 trains a week or 6 a day, I'm sure that we'll streamline the technology, we'll have the right infrastructure. We see that our partners are trying to take action. Our stakeholders in ports, and I'm sure that in October we'll be able to sort it out, to fix everything, and in November and December we'll be able to process bigger volumes. So the example of Kaliningrad is a great one. That's how logistics has to evolve in Eurasia. There are issues, and we'll be able to sort them out together. Well, that's clarified that you launched this Chernyakhovska crossing east and west on the birthday of Russian Railways. And we actually had the first train that was processed and sent to Poland. Thank you, Alexei. Martin, over to you. So, you heard a lot what we said. It's great that we've been discussing some issues, and we've been talking about this co-understanding, co-participation in the process. So we talked about what has been done in the past 5 years. What could happen in the next 3 to 5 years? I like some of the ideas. What kind of trains? How do we change logistics? How do we integrate? Olga said that today it's a logistics chain where freight owners want to get and to stay there. So they want to get integrated in that supply chain. So what could be our plans in the next 5 years? Imagine we'll be sitting here in the next 5 years. What would we be talking about? Do you see any potential to drastically improve it and change it so that this Eurasia route and other alternative routes could prove efficiency, could deliver quality, could deliver the right values, could be competitive in terms of pricing? And as Uwe said, it should be, these tariffs should not go up and down. They should be on some long-term level, stable level. Martin, over to you.
Yeah, good question. I'm also willing to be a little bit visionary, like we are in Metrans normally. And we are really looking forward to work already now what will happen in the future. I know it's some work, but I believe that basically from the European side, we could see that we have to a little bit more push to our European Union, Eurosalius, to work together, as we mentioned together with Alberto, that we need to push the politicians to speak one voice, which will help us as a carrier to move forward and not to stay in the situation where we are now. It means the possibility to use more digital solutions on the rail, to use the communication channels, which will help all the countries and rail infrastructure companies to discuss with the local drivers. We need, of course, to invest into the infrastructure a little bit more. I'm happy to see now in Europe investments in the speed trains for the passengers, which I believe will help the cargo carrier to use the space which will be released on the infrastructure, and that means that we will be able really to move the cargo from the road to the rail. And in terms of the connection east-west, I strongly believe in good communication between the companies on both sides, basically 1520 and 1435, together to find a solution for all EDI, I mean electronic data interchange, including customs information, which is really also important for the governments. And all these things might help in the future, and I hope near future, to speed up all the processes. We can see that there are built some new construction like scanners at the border. Also, Slovakian government is going to build new scanners for the trains to speed up the process, and as Alexei mentioned, to let's say make the processes as much smooth as possible when we'll be able to move with the train within 1 hour, including the customs clearance. It's really or customs check, basically. It's really the most important thing for us when we speak about the trains from east to west or west to east. And if it's possible in Kaliningrad at 1 hour for the customs check, it's possible also on the other border crossing, I'm pretty sure. And this is what we need to focus on. This will really speed up the process. And what we will do, of course, is pushing the infrastructure companies in all specific countries to heavily invest into the infrastructure to help us in this goal. So from my point of view, the combination of all these things might help. Coordination of all parties which are here, like as I mentioned, customs, veterinary, rail carrier on the both sides, terminals, It will help to speed up the process and to make it smooth. And at the end of the day, it comes to the situation that, of course, the rate might be stable for the clients, which is the win-win situation, and which is the point which we are all willing to offer to the clients.
Thank you,
Martin. Alberto, what are the challenges in 2020, 2021 you faced as the client, and what problems are no longer there? So, what was done there?
Problems, we cannot say that they are no longer there, because working with things on the move, we always have problems which are connected with the dynamic, and we need also problems to make our life more interesting, if I can say so. I think that the big challenges are, if we talk about the transcontinental railway solution, are at this moment for sure the point of transshipment between the various systems, because they are creating and in the need of a stronger coordination between railway, customs broker, and also the preparation of the train and the document. We launched already last year the proposal in Malashevitse to reduce the timetable, which is still foreseeing 8 hours per train eastbound before to leave the European Union, to reduce this 8 to 12 hours up to a time from 3 to 4 hours as a sort of first possible result of digitalization, because all the European customs export documentation is already in electronic and digitalized forms, means that the Polish customs are receiving all these documents in advance, and there should not be any more need to keep a train standing for so long time. Of course, we are not intending to sell that as a mega advantage in terms of transit time, but it's going to become an extremely important advantage in terms of management of infrastructure, space, occupancy of the tracks, and capacity on the same, which is more or less similar to what the Russian railways are doing, increasing the productivity of the train, transporting more and more containers and more tons every trains. The system is the same. You try with one path to bring more in order to have less problem and to simplify. Another very important point is that, and I'm very thankful to the great work and effort made by the Russian railways together with the Russian Transport Ministry, because it's been very recently readapted the tarification for the transport of the tank container solutions, and that I'm sure that will bring in a mid-term an increase of the quantity which are transported on the railways, and there will be also an increase of the usage of the train for the Oktobryanskaya railway. I'm sorry for my terrible pronunciation. I think that the very big challenge for the future is to be able to work all together, like we are sitting and discussing over the issues in a concrete way today, and every time there are this promotion event. Because if we can work together and if we can try to become the railway one voice of the railway family, we have the possibility to become competitive against any other transport modality, from the political level, from the operational level, up to the sales to the customer. Even if everybody has obviously driving his company, his own needs to be solved, and his own target to be achieved according to the wishes of his own board of directors, of his own strategy of the company.
Alberto, you mentioned Poland. Can I ask you, do you think you are getting more answers than questions today? And do you agree with the solutions provided? Or are you happy with the situation about this transshipment in Malashevitch and Belarus? Are you happy with the situation over there as well?
If I look egoistically, we found an acceptable solution for which we can have a quite acceptable development is not optimal, but is acceptable and give us the allowance to develop our business and to keep a certain predictability for the operation. If I don't look egoistically and I look as a lover of the railway solution, I'm absolutely not happy of what is happening in Malashevitz and Brest, because there are still too many discrepancies for what is the matter of the interpretation of the customs, and there are still too many mismanagement for the occupation of the railway infrastructure, especially on the Polish side. I'm sorry, because if I consider, I read some statistic that during the Soviet time in the 70s in Malashevitz and in Brest there was a number of tonnage which was much higher than today that has been transported, and there was not the congestion that we have today. So it seems that there is something that really was done differently on the management of the infrastructure and now need to be reported in the same way. That is a very clear point. From the other side, we are also understanding that the Polish railways are finally making a mega program of investment, which has to start at some years ago. They are now concentrating all the efforts on that. And we know by experience that to reconstruct and to rebuild the railways, it takes 3 to 5 years as it is planned. And we have a lot of expectation that for the next 3 to 5 years, we will have better condition, not only for the Malashevitz, not only for the Poland itself, but also for the border crossing between Poland and Germany, because now finally we don't have only Frankfurt-Oder and Stettin, but we have also Horka, which is fully electrified on both sides, and we have a third gate to connect Germany and Poland.
Thank you. Uwe, over to you. About the balancing of cargoes, you mentioned the flows from China to Europe and back. But Alexei, what is actually the balance between the shipments eastward and westward? Well, it depends on the route, whether it's Altenkul, Brest or Kaliningrad, but I would say 30 to 50% there. Just because the Chinese volumes are actually much higher, and the growth for the Chinese shipments is much higher than from Europe. From Europe to China, the growth is like 10%. From China to Europe is like 40%, and that is true. And I would agree with Uwe that this would have some impact on the cost, the pricing, and then on the technologies. We talked about this Finnish route through the Oktyabrskaya railways, and I think that this is the most promising destination. In particular, I know about the position of Viktor Georgievich, and of course the Finnish destination and the work through the ports of Oktyabrskaya railways. This would really help us somehow restore the balance there. Uwe, why do we still have this imbalance, like the European only grow by 10%, the Chinese cargoes grow by 40%, even not taking into account the the populations of the countries, which is different, of course, but we need to do something about that. What are the tools and solutions that we can use? Maybe marketing, tariffs and prices, or something else. What would draw European clients to use this route to deliver their cargoes by railways to China? Well, if it were that simple, we would have implemented that already. But maybe the biggest challenge there is understanding. We have discussed this for some years now, and I have been telling this for several years, that this capacity of 15-20 is important, and of course during our decarbonization efforts this route is going to be quite important. But what are we going to really transit there? And I'm quite serious about that in my new capacity. And I talked with my Russian Railways colleagues that our success would depend on having reliable and trustworthy communications and interaction with the producers and with the vendors. It would not be enough for a railway or a related party to talk to railways and discuss, claim that they are so good, but they won't be that good unless they fight for the volumes of transportation, and who those may be. We do see that in China they have the infrastructure of logistical platforms through which they sell. Around those platforms there are and there have been major logistical companies, but there are also smaller, and very many of those smaller specialized forwarding agents and companies that would put together a batch of shipments. And unfortunately, we do not have such in Europe. Large forwarding agents in the past several decades have concentrated on air shipment and sea shipment. So we do not have people good enough to support the sales through railways. This is the biggest challenge. The second one, which I think to be quite significant, we need to remember that the market terms in all the way to the pandemic, to the start of the pandemic, demonstrated that the sea freight to China has always been more beneficial, less costly than what we could have offered, and that was also true for the eastern destinations. And indeed, there are not too many benefits to incentivize clients to switch from sea transportation to railroad transportation. If you take the shipments from Hamburg or Rotterdam to China, we do have the cargoes available, but there's still some imbalance present. So I believe that we are lacking some incentives for the major logistical companies to make such a switch so that they would be using the railroads. And our argument, however, would be that we will be able to offer some significant and CO2 neutral balance. And this is the argument that we need to be using more and more, and to use this as the focus of gravity to our systems, and so that we would mobilize some clients. Would you agree that this growing trend of the green agenda and the decarbonization, would it really help to be one of the arguments to mobilize clients, to draw the clients to railroads? Well, we do not feel that too often that we as do not feel that as carriers in my motherland of Russia and in my motherland of Europe. Of course, after the Paris Agreement, the climate agenda is of critical importance, and logistics is a big part of this agenda. So let's just use that. What I see in Europe 100% is, and I think that this is something that is going to also start in China, companies, the producers and the vendors, they more and more feel the market opportunities, but they also feel that they need to really be driven by the decarbonization efforts and the reduction of CO2 emissions, both in the manufacturing, logistics, and the marketing. And this is the argument that is going to play more and more. And take the claims and the priorities of the new government in Germany. This is the new thinking. This is the new influence. We do have the history of 200 years of railways and quite a successful story. We know that rail actually was one of the drivers for the industrialization of Europe, and I believe that rail today can be also the driver for a better climate, for the steps to improve our climate. And in this respect, we need to be proactive and act proactively. All our opportunities need to be used, and I do see that in Russia and in Belarus there are some green methods of logistics available, but I do also see that as in Kazakhstan, in Lithuania, and in Kaliningrad, still a lot of diesel engines are used. But if we do find a solution to that, I can say that we can demonstrate that to our clients, and they would be happy to move and switch. Briefly, the energy crisis, would it be an additional factor or driver to really boost TEU shipments? Indeed, you heard that the price of energy is actually growing. Alexei Nikolaevich would say that we may guarantee some rates and tariffs, and but from the point of view of the market, indeed, Alexei, you need to be thinking about increasing the rates as well, because otherwise we won't be able to support ourselves. Thank you very much. We would ask Alexei then. Victor, in this puzzle that I see, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, there's some feeling that one of the factors of really saving the carriers would be this container shipments. 40 EU shipments, would it be a factor of development and evolvement into the future? The multimodal transportation, would it be of help? Would it be this saying point? Well, Kaliningrad actually demonstrated to Southeast Asia and to Europe the way challenges may be resolved when you do see some backlog in the railway terminals, and how the problems and challenges can be met. And of course, this would be a salvation. And as Uwe said, that it should not be really big ships there. It should be probably smaller ships, maybe 150, 200, or 300 containers that can be shipped quickly over the sea from port to port, and to exclude such a very difficult parameter for the transit operators as the idle time waiting for the handling of cargoes, loading and unloading. But if you're talking like 150 40 TEUs, it would take only, I don't know, some 3 trains. It would be loaded onto a smaller ship, and that ship may travel to any port of Europe or Scandinavia. And all such projects may be implemented. And all such transformation we do support, and we are moving there, and we are ready to improve. Olga, in terms of this Finnish route destination, the colleagues actually mentioned the need for the right positioning and marketing of your destination. I wonder whether there have been any difficulties with your clients about transit times, rates, etc. So what were the most popular questions that were asked of you about this route from Asia to Finland? What is of concern to clients today? Initially, when we launched the first trains from Asia to Finland, of course, there have been quite a few questions from potential clients, and there was some lack of confidence whether this route is going to be operational and efficient. Would it be regular service or not? So there have been a lot of those questions. But indeed, any new client will have the same questions when the client comes to a new route, to a new destination. And these questions we were able to meet and answer, and that is why we see the growth of our clientele today. I can tell you that any new destination, any new route that we're launching, even when we're talking about a different dispatch point in China or a new destination in Europe, still we would receive those many questions about how it is going to work. So there's only one way there, I think. First, you need to really explain in very much detail the way it is going to be operated, and to demonstrate stability in your operations as soon as you launch this particular route. And in principle, we do receive clients for the rail shipments much easier than a few years back, when we actually were pushing for this international shipment route via Russia. Well, you mentioned that in the ports of the far east of Russia, the cargoes may sit for 3 or 4 weeks, but then it would be quite stable in the transit times. Olga, do you think that this is another factor, that would it really be some influence on the reputation of the railroads, that the cargoes may be still sitting in the sea? Well, it would take 12 days to travel by rail, but if you take the total shipment time, it might be quite a factor. So this problem with the ports, is it going to be resolved in the future, do you think? And this transit time, which is so important to clients, yes, by rail it is quite predictable, but take deep sea section. Well, I was not claiming that clients are happy with their cargoes sitting for 4 weeks in the Far Eastern ports. This is a daily headache, I would say, but there's some split between the routes and those sections. Clients do understand what is this direct rail route through Russia, Kazakhstan, etc. 15, 16 days for the regular shipments. And what is this story about the Far Eastern ports? When you may have some delays in China, you may have some containers sitting in the Far Eastern ports for several weeks. But then, of course, clients understand that the railways do operate regularly and smoothly. So we're not only building an alternative between or to deep sea and direct rail deliveries and air, but we're building another option, a few options, and the clients may choose between fast and expensive, and slow and not expensive, but you may choose anything in between. And those big consolidators and forwarders of cargoes in this market, they really do kind of like allocate their orders between the various modes of transportation. And of course, they are using the direct rail shipments, but also they are using Far Eastern ports. So we can say that the market is going to be, or is getting more and more educated and knowledgeable in terms of the capacity and opportunities provided by rail compared to deep sea and air. So the client would choose a rail because of the speed of delivery, or the tariffs may be the decisive factor. So because people are saying that deep sea is now equal to rail and even to air. Depends on your kind of like agenda, whether the particular type of transportation is included into the overall corporate supply chains. So if it is, if the money is no problem, then it is air. Now, if it is something of industrial need and urgency, it might be direct rail. If you choose between deep sea and the Far Eastern ports, of course, clients will be deciding on the speed of delivery and price. So today, to repeat, the clients really do not decide between speed and price, but they have now few options to choose from. Martin, to finish, clients, are they trying to incorporate into this logistical chain of the TEU shipments from Asia to Europe? Why they are doing that? Why they are interested in such a route?
To be honest, currently I think the clients are interested to ship somehow, and this is basically the current issue which we all have and see in the moving the shipment between China and Europe, that there is a lack of capacity. If we speak about the air freight, if we speak about the sea freight, if we speak about the rail freight, basically on all sides we see lack of capacities. And I would say that currently, indeed, there is not so much questions about the rates, but about the capacities. We are having in front of us Christmas. Now in China is Golden Week. So after the Golden Week, there will be even much big pressure and demand for the space and availability to move the cargo somehow to Europe. And that's why I really think now there is big demand for capacities and how to do it and how to bring the cargo on time to Europe generally. I do agree that there is a big gap between eastbound and westbound. I do agree with Uwe that we might do something a little bit more for the clients here in Europe to convince them for the rail freight, in our case, to move more cargo on the eastbound to China, and to convince them that this is the good solution also for them. But in a general, we know that import from China to Europe is much higher than the export. So it's not only about the rail freight, it's basically also in the sea freight and in all type of the transportation that there is a stronger demand for westbound cargo to Europe than from eastbound cargo to China. Generally, I think the driven aspect till the end of the year will be capacity.
Thank you, Andrei. Just 1 minute. 2021, the expectation was 1 million of TEUs of transit across Russia and 2 million for the next years. And we discussed infrastructure, and we seem to have many challenges there. Are you not concerned that there would be a collapse of the infrastructure? And are we going to really meet that challenge? Yes, the railways will be able to meet that. Any task put forward by the head of state will be met, no doubt about that. And of course, we all, based on our today's discussion, probably do not fully appreciate this imbalance in the economy, which was caused by the pandemic. And this exit from the pandemic shows that our logistics and power engineering are all distorted. People are thinking about the environmentally safe production and power generation, but everything is in imbalance yet, and we still need some time to really put the right accents. And we, as the company which provides logistical services to our clients, we need to really be thinking one step ahead. Thank you very much. And my last question, we have only 2 minutes before the end. Hugo, maybe you can help me. What is the future? What would be the stability guaranteed to the clients? We wanted to keep the rates the same. Can we ask that question, Uwe? Alexei, you have 1 minute for the answer. Indeed, quite a difficult challenge. Flexibly, I would really be trying to reach the 1 million TEUs. Well, rail is stable, reliable, predictable, and I think in the last 6 years that we have been working on a project, they demonstrated our arguments. I'm in for some practical optimism, and we do have a strong Eurasian rail team. If we're going to work in a concerted way and listen to each other, we're going to hit 1 million, 2 million, and even 4 million TEUs. That's 1500 Moscow time. Thank you very much, colleagues. You saved us. You proved your ability to listen and to be heard. I thank all of you. I shake your hands remotely. Andrei and Alexei, thank you very much, and see you next time. Let's move on. Thank you.